Little known Grover Cleveland fact. Big JRPG guy.
Welcome to Bookclub no Kiseki. I am Sam Ullman.
I'm David Bernard Howe.
And I'm Matt Jorgensen.
And it is several weeks since our last episode, which was several weeks since the episode before that. So we made a lot of room for Matt to get married again.
Which I greatly appreciate.
Yes. Matt, is it okay if I call Becca your second wife now? Because you married her twice.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going with that. I like that.
Okay. Okay, cool. But today we will be continuing our journey through Falcom's Kiseki series with another chunk of the final chapter of Trails in the Sky, stopping as soon as we step foot in the final dungeon. But before we get started, que pasa, kids?
Now I'm imagining someone who has a Grover Cleveland situation with their wives where, like, they marry one wife, divorce, marry a different wife, divorce, marry the original wife. So it's their third wife, but they've only had two wives. Anyway, my several weeks since it was Grover Cleveland, yeah?
I think so.
Okay. I don't know. That could just be a name I made up, but
it's a real president if it's supposed to be a president.
Those are president ones.
Okay,
and a second time non-consecutively. But my past few weeks have been rough because I'm out of training at my job, and my job is hard, and it's not actually hard. Like, I just sit at a desk and I take phone calls, but they're really hard phone calls, and everyone wants me to do a lot of stuff, and I don't know how to do it.
It sucks. And
I've been having a bit of I'm not a midlife crisis, but I can't quite call myself a quarter-life crisis anymore, but I'm having a crisis of being 30 years old and feel like I don't know what I'm doing with my life or what I want to do with my life. I'm trying to figure out something to do with my life. My thought right now is that I'll just, if in 5 years I haven't got a reason not to, I'll just move to France or Japan or something and teach English.
That'll work.
Because that's something I could do.
You should narrate audiobooks.
That I don't know if I'm a good voice act person.
I think that you are. This is biased because I've hired you to be an actor in many of my things before, but I think that, like, I saw a thing on TikTok today about, like, how to get started, and I was like, Bernard would be great at this. I'm going to tell Bernard to do this later. And serendipitously, you said you were looking for a pivot, so I will send you that information.
Okay.
This podcast will now be a chronicle of your rise to audiobook stardom.
Oh, okay.
You, of course, can always say no, but I was thinking of you today.
That's sweet.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Matt? Did you do anything at all? Nothing important?
Well, let's see. I got a haircut. That was cool. I was gonna try and do Joker as bearing the lead, but I'm still burnt out. I got married. Yay! Again.
Yay!
I've probably said that already. There's no handbook for redoing a wedding because of a pandemic. It's a lot of work, and things are confusing. But it was absolutely worth it. Other than your standard dumb wedding stuff that happens. Rebecca, nope, not telling that story. Not because it's a bad story, but like I don't want people to be concerned about the people involved. We had an ambulance show up. Everyone's fine. It's fine. It's fine. And it wasn't for me. That's a big first. Usually it is for me. But I didn't have to panic call Sam with a pineapple emoji.
Yeah.
Which I couldn't have done anyway because like halfway through Friday I just lost my phone. Just like I'm pretty sure my mom picked it up or somebody picked it up, but we had dinner and I had my phone, and then I didn't see it again until Monday.
Whoops.
Whatever. Weddings, lol. Anyway, that's I think that's pretty much all I did. I somehow got a minor cold and heat stroke at the same time, which is so on brand for me. It's both funny and not funny. But yeah, that's all I did.
Nice. I because we jostled around the podcasting schedule a lot, my weekends are completely free now, so I've been able to spend a lot of time catching up on video editing projects, and I knocked like 3 of them out in one weekend, where before like I think I got 1 done from like September to Christmas type thing. So it's moving along great, and that has been awesome. But the other things I did this week, I will talk about when we record RPG Book Club. But for now...
It was Grover Cleveland.
Nice. I'm glad. But speaking of Grover Cleveland, let's listen to the Castle song and then talk about the plot for the week. Yeah. he's huge into it. So, as you may or may not remember, where we last stopped, we had gone into the castle in Gransel for a big fancy dinner because we won the requisite martial arts tournament. And as soon as we got there, we ditched Zen in our room in order to find Hilda, the head maid, and try and find a way to speak to the queen. Excuse me. We then can go to each of the rooms and meet up with all of the mayor class citizens that we've ran into so far. Mayor Klaus from Roland is there, as is Dean Collins from the Academy. They say that all of the Royal Assembly is here except for Dalmar, who we got arrested, and Russell, who we're aiding and abetting, and General Morgan, who is currently being cooed. They say that... I wrote Dalmor in my notes, but it's actually Dunan. So they mentioned how Duke Dunan is the one that's not letting the queen get any visitors, which is a sign that it's Richard, because we already know Richard is pulling all of the strings. Apparently, even the Royal Assembly has to get Duke Dunan's permission to get an audience with the queen, and he's not handing any of them out. Mayor Maybell and Leela are there, and they mentioned that Captain Almathea hand-delivered the invitation to Mayor Maybell and wouldn't let her give no for an answer. They mentioned how they were incredibly busy and couldn't pull themselves away, but they kind of had to be here. And she mentions that General Morgan hasn't been heard from in weeks because he's, quote, busy with, quote, anti-terrorism countermeasures. And he's probably just been kidnapped. She says that the Royal Assembly doesn't all get together like this unless there's a huge announcement from the Queen, but the Queen isn't going to be there, so it's just weird that everybody is here together. We can run into Chief Murdoch, and he says that Almathea forced him to come as well, but she doesn't seem to know that he's helping Russell stay hidden. So Estelle and Joshua make their way up to the Queen's room, which is like a penthouse palace on top of the castle itself. When they get up there, they're, of course, turned away by the guards who aren't letting anyone in, but they seem to be tripping over what the official story is. They're like, oh, the princess is inside attending the Queen. I mean, she has been like around, I guess, and it's very fishy. So while we're talking with them, Hilda, the head maid, comes out from the palace, reprimands the guards for being rude to us, and she offers to take us back to our room, where we tell her that we have a message for her. She then takes us to the maid quarters. We fill her in, and she says that security is way too tight to get us into the palace, but she has an idea, so we should come and see her after our big party. So we go pick up Zen and head into our party. Everyone is seated, and there are 2 empty seats at the head of the table. One, obviously, for the Duke, and everyone's like, who's going to be the other one? And, of course, it's for Richard. And he's officially introduced to the Assembly at large. Most of there hadn't even heard of him. And they all have their big feast, and when everyone's done eating, the Duke is like, oh, I need to make an important announcement. Hey, Richard, you make the important announcement. And so Richard says that the Queen is going to abdicate her throne and turn over royal authority to Duke Doonan, and everyone is super surprised, and Estelle and Joshua make determined anime faces. The elected officials in the room are very uncomfortable with the idea that the future of the country would just be tossed to an imbecile like this, and they kind of were hoping that she would be their last queen and there would be like an election or literally anything besides having a clown have a soldier tell him that, oh, hey, I run the country now at a dinner party. Richard says that the Queen herself will make an announcement at her birthday celebration, and that he was just getting it out in front of everyone so that they could be prepared for however the citizens will react to the information when it comes out. He also casually mentions that the Erebonians are probably going to take advantage of the chaos, and so we'll have to tighten security even tighter to ensure the smooth transition of power, using the outsiders as an other to make an excuse for him to be a military dictator. Dean Collins is like, so this is cool and all, but what about Princess Claudia? She should be the next ruler. Like, that's the line of succession. And Richard says that the Queen specifically chose Doonan because Claudia is still a child. And also, by the way, she's going to get married real soon. The marriage gossip was a big distraction, and distraction was super effective. So everyone just starts talking about that. And towards the end of the party, Richard tells Zen to tell the Bracer Guild of the news, and he says that he will. After the party, we go back to our room, make up an excuse to ditch Zen again, and go for a walk. But before we can reach the maid quarters, we run into Richard, who definitely remembers us from before. He says that he looked us up and saw that we were Cassius's kids, and he invites us to sit and have a chat with him. He tells us that he served under Cassius in the war, and that Cassius was a master tactician. He says that Cassius basically is the reason that Liberal pushed back the Erebonian invasion. And Cassius had apparently told none of this to Estelle or Joshua, but Joshua had figured out some of it himself. But Estelle is like, I didn't even know Dad was in the army type thing. Richard leaves, but on his way out, he says, you've told me the one thing that I wanted most to know, but he doesn't expand on that. He just leaves. So we make our way to the maid headquarters, where Hilda reveals her big idea that we'll pretend to be maids and go with her to attend the Queen, complete with Joshua in his second dress of the game. Comedy. Maid costumes donned, we head to the royal keep. The guards almost recognize us, but Hilda is a G and scolds them for us. They let us through, and Hilda takes us up to see the Queen, who has been expecting us. We tell her what Professor Russell asked us to, and she says she might know what Richard is up to, but she has no idea how he would even know about it. Apparently, 10 years ago, there was a huge orbital reaction detected far beneath Gransel, and Professor Russell was the one who went to investigate it, and he thought it was probably a relic from the ancients that was still functioning. She says that the gospel could stop this artifact, but Russell was unable to figure out what the artifact did, so they never even made it public, so how could Richard know about it, much less know what it was and what stopping it would do? We promise that we'll get to the bottom of it, and she says she expects no less from Cassius's kids, because, of course, every single person in Liberal has a close relationship with her father. She asks if we know the whole story about Cassius, and we don't, so finally someone tells us. 10 years ago, there was a tragedy that occurred in southern Erebonia, and that tragedy was rustled up to be an excuse to go and invade Liberal. Thus started the 100 Days War, where everything but Gransel fell in a matter of days. But then Russell had his fighter airships, and Cassius had master strategy, so Liberal was able to push Erebonia out. But in one of the battles along, as they were pushing it back, the clock tower in Roland was destroyed, and Lena, Estelle's mother, was killed. He had saved his country, but lost his wife, so he quit the military, refused his Medal of Honor, and retired to the life of a bracer, so that he could protect what was most important to him, Estelle. Estelle says, but it wasn't his fault that Mom died, and the Queen interjects, yes, given that he lost her in the service to his country, the responsibility is mine. I failed to protect your mother, and I have wanted to apologize to you for a long time. Which I really like that the Queen did this, because, it is the Queen's fault. Technically it's Erebonia's fault, if anything. It wasn't like she started the war, but it's like you make soldiers and bad things happen to them, and it's your fault because you made them soldiers. But
agreed.
Estelle says that she doesn't need to apologize, and the Queen thanks her for being so kind, but she tells Estelle and Joshua, stop investigating. I couldn't let anything happen to Cassius's kids like I let it happen to his wife. So go home, chill out, leave it to us. And Joshua's like, no thanks. He's like, this peace that we've had for a long time is basically about to destroy itself tomorrow. We can't sit back and do nothing. Our dad would want us to keep it pushing and get to the bottom of it. And the Queen says, well, it seems she was right about you. And before we can ask who she means, she gives us a formal request for the Bracer Guild. She says that she is a prisoner of the Intelligence Division and she needs rescue, as does her granddaughter, Claudia. The coup all started when she picked Claudia to be her successor because Dunan sucks, and people are sexist, and they say that two queens in a row would be seen as weak. And so Richard is backing Dunan to take power for himself and rule from the shadows. But his big excuse is even this imbecile at least has a penis, so he's a better ruler than the Queen or Claudia would be. She says that Richard has recently asked her to do things like increase military spending, and formalize a relationship with the Jaeger Corps, which are all mercenaries, invest in ordnance of mass destruction, start a draft, all this crazy fashy stuff. And she said no all the time. She's like, I always thought that he was doing it to like serve his country, but I think he's just a power hungry asshole now. He always told her that she was being womanly and idealistic, and thus he kidnapped Claudia and demands that she denounce her claim to the throne, or else Claudia gets it. The queen says that she won't negotiate with terrorists, but she really doesn't want Claudia to die, so that's where we come in. We accept her request to save him, and we head back to the maid's quarters. When we leave the maid's quarters to go back to our room, we're caught in the hallway by Almathea, who says she's been looking for us and asks where we were. We can lie, but she knows that we were there in the maid quarters, so no matter what lie you say, you get caught. And she's like, why were you in the maid quarters? And before we can answer, Zen comes in, drunk as hell, and he's like, hey, guys, did you get the snacks that I wanted? I got the munchies from all of this alcohol. And Joshua is like, yeah, we first asked the cooks, but they weren't back. They're probably still tidying up from dinner or something. So we were asking the maids if they had anything there, but no luck. So Zen then cat calls Almathea in a huge drunken way, and she is like, get me the fuck out of here, and she leaves. So we make it back to the room, and of course Zen was faking being drunk, just being a bro and getting us out of trouble. He asks us point blank what the queen said, because he's not an idiot and he knew that we were up to something. Turns out that he got a letter from Cassius, a fucking course, and he says that he was in and Cassius says that he's in Arabonia investigating the Jaeger Corps, but he has a feeling that something is afoot in Liberal, so he wants Zen to come and help out under the guise of joining the martial arts tournament. So we tell Zen what we're up to and how we have to go save Claudia, and he says that he wants to help us. Then meanwhile, we see a flash of Richard and the Spec Ops in some huge cavernous dungeon, and they're about to go into its depths, but then they're attacked by some robots that they call archaisms. He says that tomorrow they will forge the future with their own hands and claim ultimate power. Mwahaha, mwahaha, mwaha, mwahaha. So it seems that the clock is ticking. Back at the guild the next day, we get Elnan up to speed, and he says that we need an emergency gathering of the Gransel bracers because we won't be able to get any reinforcements. As of that morning, Richard has closed all of the gates leading out of Gransel. Basically, martial law is in full effect. Elnan says that he thinks Claudia is in the royal villa and that we need to Avengers Assemble to go and get her out. So we're going to get Niall, the royal guardsman, and our bracers and make an all-out offensive on the villa to go and get her. We can go around town to gather them all, and it's not very eventful. The only important things are that Niall has been missing since he got that phone call last time, right before our big match, and Julia has already left. So we gather everyone else together, and we discuss the plan. We're going to split into 4 groups with 2 decoy teams, a support team, and a rescue team. And since we're the main characters, we get to be the rescue team. Julia shows up, and she has about a dozen royal guardsmen with her. They've all been in hiding in Gransel, so she's like, we'll be the decoy teams because they're trying to kill us. So we'll be a pretty successful distraction to just show up and wave at them. And so we go do that. So when the time comes, they basically just walk out in front of the villa to lure them over towards the airfield and make a big ol' hubbub so that all of the guards from the villa leave towards the airfield. The Gransel bracers are all there to support them and keep all the guards busy so that we can sneak in. Inside the villa, there are still plenty of guards, so we fight a lot, including some new Spec Ops dudes with big old halberds that hit real hard and they take hits real good. But eventually we make it into the banquet hall where the prisoners are being held, and Niall is there safe and sound. And so is the princess, who recognizes us. Estelle doesn't recognize her, but on second glance, it's Chloe. And again, apologies, Bernard, for spoiling this last time. I thought that it was more obvious than it was.
I feel like I wouldn't have been surprised. I would have been like, oh, duh.
Okay. So after Estelle and Joshua WTF at the Revelation for a little bit, a Spec Ops sergeant comes in with Rianne, who is General Morgan's granddaughter. She's a tiny little girl, and he's threatening to hurt her and keep her hostage. But then Shara, she hops in and pwns that noob and saves Rianne.
Can I just say, she's like sneaking up on the person holding a hostage and takes him out, but she says a quip beforehand. Mm-hmm. You can't say a quip then sneak up on someone.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, this is an action movie in an anime. She yippee-ki-yay motherfuckers at him and knocks him away. He tries to get back up, but then he gets shot by Olivier. So we're like, hey, thanks for coming and helping us out, but like, what the fuck? And Shara says that they got around the blockades by crossing the lake on a boat. She found Olivier at the guild branch, kind of just twiddling his thumbs because no one's there because we're all here. So she brought him with her. Julia rushes in, and so everyone regroups because they've successfully taken the villa back. We try and figure out what our next move is. Do we give Chloe asylum in one of the embassies, or do we try and hole up and defend the villa, or do we find some way to escape? But before we can come to any conclusion, Chloe speaks up. She makes a formal request of the bracers that we retake the castle and drive out the army, which is surely an easy thing for 20 people to do against a big-ass army. I mean, it is 20 protagonists.
It's true. Can you imagine what 20 plot armors, like, you can take bullets to the face tank with that many plot armors. So, Chloe has an idea that might just work. She says that they can sneak in through the Grancel sewers to an old connection to the castle cellar that very few know about. So the plan is that Joshua will lead Zen and Olivier through the sewers to open the gate, and then the non-playable characters will charge in and make some ruckus, leaving Girl Squad, Estelle, Chloe, and Shara, to fly in on the airship that they stole and go up and save the queen. So our two main characters split up for the first time, which is pretty cool.
I liked that Chloe happened to have a map of the sewer system on her.
Of course she did. It's convenient. and it's not like she like sketched one out. She's like, no, here's this really nice, fancy official map of the sewers.
Do you not keep a map of your local sewer system on you at all times? Or
That's just you. Yeah, so first up is Boy Team, who makes their way through the sewer dungeon, and it's a little bit longer than it was before. We have a new part to get through, and we make our way into the castle. I now can see why you would think this was the final dungeon. It is very climactic, but it's not. After you make it through the dungeon, they say they're going to wait for the clock to strike 12. So we get to control Estelle's team, who are getting ready at the lake in their ship, and they're just getting ready to fly in. You basically just have an opportunity to shop and get your character set up because they haven't been in your party in forever. So back over on Joshua's side, they storm the castle, open up the gates for the guardsmen. There's some fights. Then the gate opens and the guardsmen and the NPCs storm through the gates. Almathea sends her men down to stop the attack on the gate, but then Estelle and them fly in on their ship. So she's like, fuck, I need to go and stop them. And so you have a girl boss fight. Almathea was surprisingly easy. She is not the real boss fight of this section, but it kind of is a letdown that she's not super hard and all of that for being built up the whole game. But we take her out and then a bunch of her cronies, and we make it up to the keep. Dunan is there, and he says that we're traitors, and he's the new king, and he doesn't recognize Chloe at all. He says that we're all tricksters, and we're all women, and all women are tricksters, so Girl Squad draws their weapons, and we kick his butt. Philip comes in and asks us to beat him up instead of Dunan, and we're like, look, we're here for the queen, not for the duke. Keep him out of trouble. Keep him busy. He's an imbecile. And so we make our way up to the palace, and Lawrence is there, the leader of the Spec Ops, and he's waiting on us. And Claudia is like, look, you're a Jaeger, so you're just a mercenary. Like, you don't have to fight us because Richard is going to go to jail. Let us save the queen. Like, your contract is void. You can just disappear into the mist. It'll be fine. But then Lawrence gets real Kool-Aid drinky real fast, and he starts talking about how the world is a clockwork orbment, and we have no idea all of the interlocking pieces, and we aren't fit to be queen because we don't know the magnitude of what's going on, et cetera, et cetera. And Estelle's like, yeah, I don't understand any of that, but we're going to fight you now. So Lawrence removes his helmet, and he is the silver-haired bracer from Chapter 2, the one that had saved the children at the orphanage from the fire, and the one that Joshua was obsessed with trying to find, and the one that watched our play. I like to think that he's not as much of an asshole as he seems, and he wasn't going to kill kids for Richard, so he saved them like of his own volition, which if that's the intended read of him being their savior, it's pretty cool. Sheriff says that his platinum hair must mean that he's from the north, and he goes, yes, but closer than you might think. Don't know what that means, and so we're off to a boss fight, and he fucking kills us right away. It's basically a forced loss. What Falcom does that's pretty cool is all of their games, if they have a forced loss, it's actually winnable, and that's the super boss for the game. So this is the super boss for the game. It's real hard to win. I didn't do it. I lost on my first turn. I'm guessing you did not win this boss fight, Matt.
No, I had it. The guide accidentally spoiled it for me. I accidentally spoiled it for me, so I didn't even try.
Yeah, he hits real hard. Like
East Origin has winnable forced losses as well. Yeah. That's a recent Falcom game that I played that had that same thing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Just a side tangent. I believe all the Dark Souls games, the boss that they're like, you can't beat this. This is your introduction to dying. Can all be beat, and then it kicks you straight to the final boss.
That's cool. I have still never played a Souls. I downloaded Bloodborne when I got my PS5, and I was like, this will be my excuse. There's nothing else to play on this, so I'll play new games that are old from my backlog. And instead, I bought Atelier Ryza, and that's basically all I've played.
I mean, it's kind of the same thing.
Pathetic.
Yeah. Chilling out, not being stressed, making items with cute anime girls is exactly like incredibly intense action RPGs.
Okay, but there are...
Same.
Are there cute anime girls in Bloodborne?
There's the doll.
And there's the bird lady that everyone says is hot, and I don't get it, but there's like a whole thing about
So that's
bird
two.
lady.
That's plural. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, that'll work. But yeah. So after the fight, Lawrence agrees to leave the Queen with us, and he says that the Colonel is busy below, in quotes. We ask him what he means, and he's like, "See ya," and yeets himself off the balcony. So then the rest of the group shows up, and Julia's like, "The whole ass army is here, and they're somehow still loyal to Richard, so we got to get out of here." And the Queen is like, "We can't. The situation is more dire than it was before." Richard is after the areola, the ancient relic that Alba said he was trying to find clues of way back in the prologue. Apparently, it's so dangerous that the royal family had it sealed away like thousands of years ago. The Queen has no idea what it is, but she's sure that if Richard uses it, we'll get Great Collapse 2 Electric Boogaloo. So the Queen takes us to a room in the castle that's not used, that is said to be forbidden. The company line is that it's the treasury, and so it has all of their treasures in it, but they don't actually store anything in it at all. It's just a closed room that covers the shaft that leads down to the dungeon where they keep the areola. But Richard has dug it up and built an elevator there that leads all the way down. The Queen is like, "Oh, this must be the true reason for the coup, even more than the political power, because he would need control of the castle to be able to bring in this heavy machinery and build this stuff." So we go to use the elevator, but it's locked with some sort of special quartz. Thankfully, Professor Russell shows up. He, Agate, and Tita were hiding out, and then they realized that they could probably get lost in the big city and hide in plain sight. And so they had hopped on a freighter and have been in the city for a little bit. Russell goes to the elevator and he's like, "Oh, I invented this. There's a failsafe. If you just shock the fuck out of it, it'll turn right on, even without the key card." So we all get on board the elevator about to go down, but then the Queen gets a report that the army has arrived to the gates and they're about to start blasting. Civil War is about to be a whole thing. So she goes back out to make a public statement and trying to stop the Civil War. So we get on the Mass Effect length elevator and make our way all the way down into the final dungeon. The dungeon is huge and ancient, so the characters decide to make a base camp and have only half the party go as a scouting team, find a new place for a base camp, then they'll move camp to there, etc., etc. As far as JRPG plot contrivances for party size limits go, it's surprisingly good. It's better than the cell phone of Final Fantasy VII and basically all the other ones. So it then lets us choose our party, and the team heads off into the portion that we play next week. So you really didn't miss much, Bernard. It's just some plotty things.
Cool. I didn't pay much attention.
Dope. Speaking of Bernard not paying attention, here let's listen to some music and then talk about the extra shit so I can tell you the ending of Carnelia. So we get our second to last thing of liberal news this week, which is basically just a summary of our winnings at the tournament. The only interesting thing is that people say that there are corroborated reports of seeing the ancient dragon that has been murmured about over in Ravenous Village. So dragons might be a thing in the next game. I don't know. I haven't played the next one. This is the only one of them I've played, but maybe we'll start dragoning it up. But the main extra shit this week is the only side quest, which is getting the last Carnelia book so that you can get the ultimate weapon for Joshua or Estelle. So the plot where we left off has been a long time, because it's been like 3 weeks since the last time we recorded, which is like 3 weeks since the one before that, which was the last time we talked about Carnelia. So to remind everyone of what had happened, Toby was given a functional ancient relic by Matthias to go and deliver, and since then a whole bunch of Jaegers have been coming after him to try and get it from him. And Carnelia, dressed as a nun, has been dispatched by the church to protect him. Last chapter, they boarded a train to get away from some Jaegers. So this chapter, they arrive at their destination, and there are much more Jaegers like waiting on them to get off the train this time around. So instead of fighting, they sneak off through an employee-only area onto the train tracks, walk back along the train, and then leave somewhere else completely. And Toby convinces the guards that he's a manager for an opera singer, and Carnelia pretends to be the opera singer. They buy it. They let him through. Carnelia is like, wow, you think on your feet getting us through there, you should be a bracer. And he's like, there's no way I'll ever be a bracer. So they make their way to the sewer. They hop in, and they're going through the sewer trying to get to the cathedral at the other end. Toby is like, what if the cathedral gets attacked? And Carnelia says, faith isn't the only thing supporting the church. So next chapter, they make it to the area under the cathedral, but there are Jaegers waiting on them, and Carnelia takes them out like they are nothing and tosses one of them into the shitwater. With his dying breath, though, he hollers that Cornelia's here. There's obviously people lying in wait. Carnelia doesn't give a shit. She just keeps pushing. So Toby asks if these Jaegers are friends of hers, and she asks Toby if he had heard that she was a Jaeger from the bracers, and he says yes. He's ready to just drop it, but she continues. She says that she gave up being a Jaeger because she didn't want to meet a tragic end, forgotten and left on the floor of some foreign inn like the maid Jaeger from last time. She says, if I'm going to cash in my life's chips, then I think it's best that I fight for something worth fighting for. At least that way, I'll be able to leave a legacy of my existence behind. Behind them, the Jaegers cut off their escape route, so the only way out is through. In the next chapter, Cornelia charges forward towards the Jaegers, and they start hurling spells at her. And the spells, and I cannot stress how detailed the book is on this fact, they whip up the shit water into a feculent tsunami. It uses like 15 different words for shit. And so a literal shitstorm comes at Toby, and he dodges out of the way and makes his way over to where Carnelia was. But by the time he gets there, she's killed all the Jaegers already. Just like took them out like they're nothing. So they head up the ladder to the cathedral, but at the top there's an orbment that explodes the shit out of them, knocks them to the ground. And again, it uses many, many words to describe the shit stains all over the ground below them. So the Jaegers close in, and Toby tries to cast some spells, but he's fumbling with his orbment because he's panicking, and he knows that he's about to die. But then Carnelia shows up. She disarms the guy, takes him out, kicks ass, but she's bleeding really, really bad. She apparently in the explosion, she like body blocked Toby and took the brunt of the attack because she was supposed to be protecting him. And she's like hecka dying, but has time for one last fight. So Toby unwraps the artifact, holds his orbment to it, and unleashes as much magic as he can, just hoping for a Hail Mary. And he like blows away a shit ton of the Jaegers. And he goes to like pick up Carnelia, but then more Jaegers just keep coming. And he's like, well, fuck, I don't know what to do. Does one final like push with his orbment and blacks out. Then we have the final chapter. So in the final chapter, Toby comes to, and he's certain that he's in heaven, and Carnelia is there with him, and they're both like passed out on the floor. He looks up and he sees quote the goddess, but then the cathedral bell chimes, and it wakes him up, and he realizes that he's just in front of the cathedral, and the goddess was just some little girl that was passing by. He looks down at his artifact, and it's swirling with a gold light that eventually fades. So he picks up Carnelia, and they limp into the cathedral. They give the artifact to the cardinal, who puts it in a sacred vault. And then with the help of our testimony, the church and the bracers find the aristocrat that had hired the Jaeger Corps. He apparently had been amassing artifacts to try and get power, so they took all the artifacts for him, put him in the vault in the church for safekeeping. As for Toby, he gets witness protections and moves to the Calvar Republic, and he goes to a really swanky resort to recover. Carnelia is all the way tore up from the fighting and makes a very slow recovery. But before Toby leaves, she tells him her real name and cellmate, which is in chapter 1. He's reading a magazine and he sees Anne Selnate, and he's like, "Oh, I remember when I met Anne," and here we are in the whole story. So it then cuts back to 3 years later, where we started the book, and he's like, I never thought that I would see the name in the chronicle like this. And he reads the article underneath and says, "Yesterday, a corpse was discovered in an urban area of the capital just before dawn. The body was found to be covered in multiple stab wounds. The departed in life had been involved in charitable work and brought salvation to many afflicted souls in various regions throughout the land." So she got. Toby reveals that he did indeed become a bracer, like Carnelia had suggested to him. And the final scene is him coming back into the Imperial City for the first time in over 3 years. The end. And if you manage to get every Carnelia, you turn it into a guy in the capital, and you get the ultimate weapon for Joshua or Estelle. The correct choice is Estelle, because she fights the super boss. But yeah, that is the last of the side content for this game. I think for game 2, I'm just going to have like a special episode about things, because it was real hard to follow along with the 100% guide while playing it at the same time. So I'm just going to play number 2 at my own pace, doing my own shit, and then have a lore extravaganza episode like we did for Longcast, because this was a lot. But yeah, so let's listen to some other music, and then we'll talk about our memorable moments and wrap up this episode. What do you guys got?
I like Hilda.
Me too.
She's a fun character. I don't know. There are a lot of little things I like this week. Like, I like when after you meet the queen and you're leaving, the guards are like, "Hey, what are your names?" And you get to choose a name. for your lie. And then later, Hilda uses that name for you, and it's just like, little tricks, little fun things that I like. And I like the confrontation with Amalthea after you leave the maid's quarters. It's tense.
Yeah, it really feels like everything is going to go to shit.
Mm-hmm. And did you mention the whole scene with Kurt regaining his memories?
No, I skipped over it. It seemed extraneous, but also seemed like Cold Steel 4 might crucially hinge upon what he was saying, because he basically, it turns out that he was K from the note that said was, hey, get this to Professor R, signed K, or whatever, and that he lost his memory shortly after, but it didn't go into a lot. So
yeah, that was a weird scene.
Yeah. It feels like it would be one of those that, like, I skipped it now, and then in the middle of one later, I have to be like, so we didn't talk about this many episodes ago, but et cetera, and fill it in.
Mm-hmm.
But what about you, Matt? Do you have any?
Yeah. I love the getting the band back together scene. I love that in dumb action movies.
Yeah.
I love it in anime. It's always so good. It's always you always know it's going to be followed by like weird, dumb, heartfelt action stuff. And
we technically get a variation on that scene 3 times this week. We get it when we get all the bracers together to go to the villa. We get it when Shara shows up, and then we get it when Agate and Tita show up.
Yep, and it's also good. Feed me those anime tropes with a shovel. There are a couple of other things I like, but I had to mute myself and look it up. They are spoilers for later games, so I will not talk about them now.
Cool. Love that continues to keep happening. But because it's one of those things where it's like, I wonder, did the writers like sit down and they're like, okay, for Legend of Heroes 6, what if we make a 20 game series to be Legend of Heroes 6, and here's everything that's happening? Or did they just start writing and like mystery box it like J.J. Abrams, where they're just like, oh, we're going to talk about the Calvard Republic so that we can make a game in the Calvard Republic later, etc.
Yeah, I hope someday somebody
It's not fair to compare the work of...
Oh, no, go ahead.
What was that, Bernard?
It's not fair to compare the work of good writers naturally evolving a story to the work of J.J. Abrams. Because you can just write a complex story that goes lots of weird places. You can write that without planning the whole thing out.
Yeah.
And you can do a good job of it. J.J. Abrams doesn't do a good job of it, is the thing.
It's true. He really doesn't. I really thought that he wouldn't screw over Star Wars as much as he did, because I was a JJ defender for Force Awakens. Force Awakens isn't nearly as bad as it as people say it is, but then Rise of Skywalker was not good, and I don't feel like I need to ever defend JJ Abrams ever again. I can just watch Mission Impossible 3 in private. Be done with public opinions of JJ.
Everyone was like, look at this quote from him saying they went into Star Wars without a plan. That's why Rise of Skywalker was bad. And it's like, no, people could have written a good third movie to follow The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, following up The Last Jedi is not a particular challenge.
Yeah.
Anyway.
You kind of were set up for greatness there. Like, it was a kind of a great way to start a Star Wars movie. It like literally it was the lowest point for the light side in the whole saga. So you just had to make them win and it would be great. But this isn't Star Wars no Kiseki.
Not
Do you
yet.
have any more, Matt?
No. There's. I should never have played Trails of Cold Steel. No, there isn't. Final answer.
Okay. I have several little cute lines. So, when you get to the dinner party, Estelle has no idea what's going on, and there's no food ready when she gets there. She's like, "What the fuck?" And Josh was like, "That's because this is a formal dinner. Everything comes out in a specific order, starting with the hors d'oeuvres. Then you use the knives and forks from the outside in." And she goes, "And that's all part of having good table manners." Here comes the anxiety attack. Like, it's me. I can't do social situations where I'm supposed to kind of know what's going on already.
So a fun anecdote from the wedding. They set up the 3 forks, and I'm sitting up there at the head table waving them all around in my fingers like Wolverine because I am a child.
Hey, it's your party. You can Wolverine if you want to. But another one is, so we head back after the party, and we're like, "Oh, we're going to go for a walk." And Zen is like, "Why would you go for a walk?" And they're like, "You mean you've never like just gone for a stroll like to pass the time?" And he goes, "No, but maybe I'll rustle up some grub and find something to eat." And I'm like, "We just had this huge meal, and you want to eat?" And his quote is, "If you had a blade to my throat, my dying wish would be for some liquor and a snack." I'm like, it's me, but with just the snack. Then I love the scene where Estelle figures out that Chloe is Claudia, because you walk in and she's like, "Oh, who are you?" "Oh shit, it's Chloe." And so Chloe talks to her for a little bit, and then Estelle's like, "Okay, so what are you doing here, Chloe? And for that matter, why isn't the princess here?" And Niall's like, "That she's right in front of you. That's the queen's granddaughter, Princess Claudia." And Estelle goes, "Buh," and it just "buh" is a good exclamation, and I love it. So good. And then I love, like, as you're heading into the big final thing, you get a bunch of like shots around the city, and there was a real cute one where you see the liberal news, like the newsroom for the inside, and Niall runs up and is like, "Let's go, Dorothy. We got to go get a good spot so we can watch." And she goes, "Okay, hold on. Let me just set up the exposure quartz." And the editor-in-chief is like, "Hey, what's going on? You haven't been around in 3 days, and you just show up." And he goes, No. Big story. Biggest in the history of the liberal news." And he runs out. And it just was really cute. Always love Niall and Dorothy content. Maybe the next Kiseki game can just be about Niall and Dorothy.
Oh, that would be so good, though.
Yeah. Apparently the new trailer came out for it like this week, and it looks real good. They kind of did the Final Fantasy VII remake to the battle engine, where you're going around. It's basically an action game, but at any time you can press the button, and it's a normal Kiseki battle there, where like you can pivot your people around, and it's not on a grid anymore, but you can like line up your shots and stuff like that, like you do in this game. It's pretty dope looking. I'm pretty excited. Can't wait to get there in 25 years. But yeah. Anyone have anything else they would like to mention before we wrap up?
No.
Cool. So that will do it for this episode. This series could not happen without the support of our Ko-Fi backers. So thank you to everyone who has been supporting us. If you are listening to this in the after times, you can come and join us on www.rpgbook.club. You can get access to these episodes a month before everyone else. Next week, we will be playing we'll be finishing the game. I copied and pasted the outro from episode 1, and we're not playing chapter 1 again. We'll be finishing the game next week. So go and beat it. I'm excited to talk about the ending of this game because we will then be current with where I am, and I have been dealing with the ending of this game for a year now. So I'll be happy to be able to discuss it with someone. But for Book Club No Kiseki, I have been Sam Allman.
I'm David Bernard Hauk.
And I'm Matt Jorgensen.
Adios, amigos.
Are you ready for a fun Grover Cleveland fact?
Hell yeah.
Always.
His granddaughter was Philippa Foot, co-creator of The Trolley Problem.
Fun. That is a fun fact.
He probably had other granddaughters too, so it was a weird way to word that. But I should have said Philippa Foot was his granddaughter.
Yeah.
Wasn't he also the president that got stuck in a bathtub?
No, that's Taft.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that actually happened, but it's Taft if it did.
Yeah.
Grover Cleveland did have a mustache, though.
Is it a good
Yeah,
mustache?
it's kind of surprising how many U.S. presidents have bad mustaches.
Yeah, they should bring it back.
Yeah, I'd be down.
God, I'm imagining Joe Biden or Donald Trump with a bad mustache. I don't think either is a good look.
Donald Trump
I would
would just
pay big
look
money.
like a thumb with a cartoon mustache on it.
It would be great. It
Cleveland's
reminded me of
No, go ahead.
it reminded me of the meme back in 2016 when it was Hillary and Trump were the candidates, and the meme was Obama with a cartoonish mustache, and he was like, "My name is Barack Jose Obama," and he's like, "I can run for another presidency." But
Okay, I'm just gonna say,
anyhow,
Grover Cleveland's mustache isn't that bad. He just doesn't have a good face for a mustache. That's it. I had to get that off my chest. Let's move on.
okay. In the title of this episode, "In Defense of Grover Cleveland's Mustache."